I'm Christina Nixon, and this is for Communications 101. Boisterous, hairy, Birkenstock wearing, condescending, hippie lesbians who think they are superior. All too often, this is the image that pops into people's heads when I say the word feminist. As Emma Watson said in her speech to the United Nations upon her acceptance, the more I've spoken about feminism, the more I realized that fighting for women's rights has too often become synonymous with man-hating. If there is one thing I know for certain, it is that this has to stop. Feminism, by definition, is the belief that women and men have equal rights. My purpose for speaking in front of all of you today is to persuade you as to why everyone should be a feminist. To do so, we will take a look at the history of feminism, common opposing thoughts, and many examples that give reason to this ideology. Let's take a look at history first. According to the Encyclopedia Britannica, modern Western feminism started into the early 1900s. That is when the beginning of Western feminism began. However, feminism has been an ideology that has occurred for many centuries. The first person to publicly recognize feminism would be Plato. Feminism has been split into 3 waves within the modern Western feminist period. Each had a slightly different, priority based on prior progress. The first wave began, like I said, in the 19th century and the early 20th century. It focused on legal inequalities and women's suffrage rights. The main person of that movement was Alice Paul. The second wave began with 1960s and the 1980s. It broadened debate to cultural inequalities and gender norms and gender roles. The last wave, or the third wave, is from the 1990s to present. It's now a diverse strain of feminism, and it reaches overseas. The continuation is based off of the second wave. So, to discuss the first wave, with the women's suffrage movement, it was all about attaining women's right to vote and women's equality on a political platform, which obviously we succeeded with. As said, the second wave progressed off of the first wave. Beginning in the 1960s, so post-World War II, it discussed women's role in society. In the 1940s, when the men went off to war, women were forced to work. They didn't have anyone else to employ, so often we were put in factories and other places of employment to pick up the jobs that men could no longer do, which we proved to do very successfully, as shown on Rosie the Riveter. When the 1950s rolled around, and the men had come back to war, had taken back their regular positions, we were no longer needed. We were told to go back to the homes, to go back to taking care of the children, to go back to just being the typical housewife, having women's duties. In the 1960s, with the uprising of the younger generation, women started to think critically about this. We no longer wanted to just be housewives. We were angered by the thought that we could no longer work, that we were only useful for a certain time period. We had proved we could work prior, and with that, there was a huge wage gap towards the 1970s. Women had shown that while we could be equality, we could have equality, it was not something that was attainable. The third wave, which is the 1990s, like I said, to current, which is, as I said, now diverse and spreads to overseas. We are currently trying to assist other countries such as Syria and Libya in attaining women's rights and equality. We are still focused on a wage gap. We are still focused on women attaining equality in jobs. According to 2015 Department of Labor statistics, women make 77 cents to the man's dollar. I implore you to critically think as to why. Why are we making less when we do the same jobs? When we can still do the same positions that may be inferior to men? At this time, I'd like to take a look at opposing views. Some opposing viewpoints are pretty common, ones that you may have already thought of. As most men would say, we are not as strong as men, we are not really equal. Well, my biggest example, which is probably most widely used, is no, we do not have the physical strength that men have. Naturally, that is something that separates us physiologically, but not socially. Physiologically, men cannot carry and bear or birth children. So does that make you unequal? Questions to ponder. Another thing that people typically think of when I say the words feminism is misandry or man-hating, which is not the case at all. Feminism is not misandry. Many feminists are intersectional. This means, as an intersectional feminist, you believe in more than just fighting for women's rights and equality. You fight for the rights of every person. You are a humanist. You believe in human rights. As I like to put it this way, while many feminists can ruin it for the rest of us, it's like how not all Muslims are terrorists or not all cops are bad cops. There are just those few that do disdain and dislike men, but that shouldn't ruin what feminism has done for the rest of us, or for men who choose to be pro-feminist. Some positives from feminism occur right here in our classroom. Think about your mothers, sisters, daughters, wives, any woman that you have in your life. Think about what she's able to do now versus what she was able to do back then. Think about your mother who goes to work and is the primary supporter of your family. If feminism had not impacted our society in some way, would she be able to take care of her family? Would she be able to go to school and get an education? The answer is no. If we didn't have someone, or feminists and pro-feminists, fighting for our rights, these goals would not be reached. I'd like to bring up feminism in other parts of the country as well. There's a 10-year-old girl in Paraguay who was raped by her stepfather. The stepfather impregnated her, and when the mother went to the government to bring this up, she was jailed for asking for an abortion for her child. Now, if we had this in the States, of course that man would be jailed and detentioned, the girl would be taken care of and treated, given therapy afterwards, and the mother would be applauded because of feminism. In other countries, women are not viewed as equal, and neither are their rights. Feminism impacts us because there shouldn't be any more oppression. More women in the workforce, more women who are educated. It impacts our society in a positive manner. We have more women working, more women voting, more productive members of society. So in conclusion, it's time we break down the patriarchy that this society was founded on and accept women as equal. No sound reasoning for objection can currently be found besides basic opinion. So I once again implore you to look at all the positives in the history that feminism has created for us in our society, from economic status to social status.